Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Habit Finder Facebook page and disrupt your week. Excited to be here. As always, one of my favorite things I look forward to every week is the opportunity to hop on here and shake things up for y'all, to be able to talk a little bit about how we think we're thinking about our lives and what we're actually thinking about our lives, what we think we're experiencing, what we're actually experiencing, our reality not being the reality, all, the natural, counterintuitive, quantum, physical, difficult challenges that we have in the tug of war of the brain. That's what we're talking about here. Really simply put, anytime you're diving into Habit Finder principles, we're talking about the upstairs brain, the downstairs brain, and the misalignment that occurs. One of the challenges with those misalignments is we believe that the upstairs brain is totally in control. The rationale, the justification, the perspective, the experiences, the truth that we perpetuate in our lives that is actually our truth, not necessarily the truth in terms of assumptions about others, assumptions about ourselves, how we're experiencing things, why we're doing things, why we're not doing things. There's a lot of complicated back and forth, stop to go forward, go left to go right kind of things in the brain, which is why after about 6 years old, 95% of your brain is developed, and the greatest asset you can focus on from then on in your life is unlearning. Now, I have always been better at unlearning in my life than learning. I was not a great student, wasn't great, didn't enjoy reading a whole lot. It wasn't until I got into theater that I actually started finding a love for reading, because it was reading as a necessity to be able to go perform, to be able to go be involved and to embody. So, but an opportunity to dive in here with a focus for you of not being your expert, not being your guru, being a disruptor, which is a lot of fun for me. Not always a glorious job, because not everyone wants to be disrupted. You're dealing with a lot of things that are entangled in someone's comfort zone and in their familiar zone. And the brain just craves familiarity. It craves predictability. And so to be disrupted itself is kind of like that deep tissue massage you got when you didn't know what you were getting in for. It can be very painful to experience if we really take it in. If it gets past our upstairs brain's defenses, where we can confabulate and justify and rationalize whatever comes in to fit the deeper narrative of our subconscious mind. So it's challenging to get past some of those defenses, to get past some of that justification, some of that rationale. But that is my mission here. Every week on Disrupt Your Week, hopefully give you an opportunity to look at things a little bit differently. Not because I want you to agree with me, but because I want you to not just totally always agree with yourself. Even in our disagreements with self, we're agreeing with the way we're disagreeing with ourselves. And it's not just thinking about what we're thinking, but it's thinking about why we're thinking and what we're thinking and why we're thinking about it that way. Granted, meta, it can get really complicated. It's just a matter of embracing the fact that you could be wrong, and you probably are. So one of the things I want to drive today is a little challenging, okay? Because this word, this focus, this tip, this drive for people has been a badge of honor for a long, long time. In our coaching, we take multitasking head on. And habit number 3, where we're working through the thinking patterns in the brain associated with work, getting the work done, actually engaging and reducing procrastination, and being able to know what needs to be done and when to do it, and being able to bring in an intrinsic and intentional energy into that. And one of the primary thieves of being able to do that is multitasking. And one of a major challenge, and yet a lot of people, similar to what we're talking about today, carry that around as a badge of honor. And in fact, still to this day, it's considered a necessity to put on your resume. Make sure people know you're a multitasker. Make sure they know that you can do a lot of things at once. You can have a lot on your plate. Or as I heard someone say at an event I was at recently that I loved, said, I can have a lot of plates on my table, not necessarily a lot on my plate. And I thought that was really interesting. But to avoid a rabbit hole that my brain just loves to go down, we're going to stay focused on today's topic. And that is why you should stop hustling. Why you should stop hustling. Well, this is a really simple conversation, but that usually means, you ever notice the simpler the conversation, the more challenging the integration? the simpler it is, the more our brain wants to complicate it, the more our brain just can't grab on to the fact that that's it. That's all? Well, yeah, that's all in terms of concept. But that's all in terms of concept. When we go to put that square peg in the round hole of our very complicated, over-analytical, comparing reality, beating ourselves up brain, yeah, that's it until we actually go to integrate it into our lives. And those of you who have been on here and following, hey, Patty Ann, have noticed that we're not about concepts here. They're definitely important. They're the seed that gets planted, but the actual growth comes from integration. The seed doesn't do anything until it's put in the ground, till it's buried and then has fertilizer put on it, which is crap, okay, to be able to challenge us so that we can grow and become better and disrupt things, break some of the shells that we've been living our lives in to be able to improve. Here's one of the challenges, though, and I've spoken a lot about hurrying. It's a death sentence for creators, because we want to create intentionally. We want to create sustainably. We want to create powerfully. And it's very difficult, if not impossible, to be intentional, to be powerful, to be sustaining if we're in a hurry. I mean, name the last thing you created in a hurry that lasted and you enjoyed the results of it. Not sometimes we enjoy being in a hurry because it means we're that much closer to the finish line. I could be running a race and I can hurry and it's going to take a toll, but I enjoy hurrying not because I'm hurrying. I'm enjoying hurrying because I'm going to get to the finish line sooner, which means I'm not as interested in the journey, just the finish line. And then I get to the finish line and it's kind of anticlimactic because it was actually about the journey. But now I'm at a finish line, I missed the journey, and I'm paying the price for hurrying. That's just not a great way to live our lives. And hustle is a major contributor to that. Now, is hustle bad? Disclaimer, got to make this clear, because inevitably every time I get on here and do a disrupt principle, okay, in terms of what you thought it meant to you versus what it's actually doing to your brain. That's what we're talking about here. There's what you think it means to you, and there's what it's likely doing to your brain. And in a lot of cases, we're only talking about things on here that impacts people's brains negatively 85 to 98% of the time. So pretty good chance that it's making this impact on you, and pretty good chance if we're talking about it here, it's really easy to rationalize, to justify, or not even notice what kind of an impact it's having. And hustle is definitely one of those. And of course, you guessed it, if we're going to bring up a specific word around a lesson, we're going to talk about the etymology of that word. And when it comes to hustle, okay, simply put, the core root of hustle means to push roughly. To hustle means to push roughly. Now, interestingly, a hustle, before it ever became kind of the description of movement, of hurrying, of fighting, of breaking through, it was actually simply describing a way to get the most amount of money from someone else with the least amount of work. I got to hustle. I come play this card game with me. Come try and win this. Try to do that. That was called a hustle. And then when hustle became a verb, okay, that's when it drew off of to push roughly, because that's what you do in order to get the most amount of money with the least amount of work. In other words, not earning the value and the lessons involved in creating it, because it's a batteries included process. We go through these processes. We create greater capacity for compassion. We create greater capacity for patience, and we create a greater capacity for curiosity. And then we are able to enjoy the journey and actually sustain our desire of the result. We can be happy, and hustle makes it very difficult to be happy. Again, let's go back to the example of the marathon. If I'm hustling to get to the finish line, I think I'm happy, but what I'm actually doing is I'm getting a stimulated response in my brain from looking forward, which is not being present, looking forward to the finish line. That's not happiness. That's not joy in the journey. And there's so many people out there hustling, believing that they're enjoying the hustle. No, what they are actually experiencing is a false joy, a counterfeit joy, which isn't evil. It's not bad. It has its place. We'll talk about that. But what it's actually creating is a stimulated response in the brain that creates an insatiable appetite. It makes life about the finish lines, not about the race, not about the journey. And guess what life is? One giant journey. Anyone here looking forward to the finish line of this life? Are you looking forward to dying? Are you looking forward to being dead? Just got this massive impression that if you are, ask for help. Talk to somebody. You got a brain that's evolved over thousands of years that believes when you're in that kind of dark place that you should isolate. And that is, we know the research has shown that's the last thing you want to do. So if the answer is yes, talk to someone. It's okay. Don't be selfish enough to believe that you don't deserve that and that you're just a piece of crap that doesn't need to figure out how to find happiness. Okay? Back to the primary discussion. I don't know very many creators that are in a relatively healthy place who are looking forward to dying. I mean, I love the line from Hamilton that when Washington tells Hamilton that dying is easy, living is harder. And the harder things tend to provide more fulfillment because they provide more growth. Not growth because of the end, because of the result, but growth because it requires you to be more present. It requires you, as my father told me going through one of the hardest times of my life, to go through it with your eyes wide open. So, hustle, though, is not bad. What we're talking about very specifically here is the overuse of hustle. Those of you that just kind of exhale and went, oh, okay, gotcha. If you felt defensive, if you felt a little bit of a prick about hustle, more than likely, you are hustling too much. I would look at hustle like antibiotics. They serve a very important element. They provide a solution when there were no others available to it. They allow when things have gotten so bad that your body can't naturally take care of it. And I get there's some holistic individuals on here that I love dearly that would argue this piece, but please look at the principle, not the details. But there are times where more extreme measures need to be taken in life. More, challenges and aggregate choices and things have built up. And that's when hustle is needed. I just want to be really careful that so many of us have brains that want life to be easier and less stressful. And so, and if we are going to engage, it needs to be perfect. And what if I can't? And all this mess of dialogue that causes us to procrastinate. And then when we procrastinate and then we have to get it done, we hustle and we get it done and like, yeah, that wasn't so bad. I'm pretty awesome, which then puts us back into neutral, which then causes us to rely on, if not become addicted to the hustle. Why? Because that's when we feel accomplished. That's when we feel like the best version of us comes out. And I'm not here to argue with that. I'm here to argue with the long-term ramifications of doing that. I'm here to argue with teaching your brain to look forward to the finish line you're hurrying towards or hustling to get to and missing all the incredible steps along the way. Not that you need to stop going forward, but one step at a time, one person at a time. And you can do that as you embrace it. Some days more than others, you can do that quicker and quicker and quicker as it becomes a habit, as it becomes a part of who you are. But hustle should be carefully considered, just like a surgery, just like antibiotics, just like any extreme measure in your health or your physicality. We will want to consider it consciously and carefully and thoughtfully. If our go-to is hustle, then our brain is going to create an environment in our life and energy in our life that requires it. That's where we make life harder than it needed to be. That's where we make life unnecessarily difficult. That's where we start manufacturing the crap to hit the fan. Because when the crap hits the fan, that's when we're at our best. That's a very limited, very carnal, very myopic way of looking at life. Now, psychologically, it is more difficult to show up at your best when crap isn't hitting the fan. That's pretty true across the human race. We know the human brain responds 6 times more potently, 6 times more powerfully to pain and suffering and loss than it does to opportunity and pleasure and possibility. However, the possibility, the opportunities, the perspectives, those are incredible fuels to learn how to run your engine of your life. Some of us need a conversion kit because we're so used to driving our lives with hustle. And there are times that we need it. There are times that we need to go a little bit faster, dig a little bit harder, take the dirt road. That's not necessarily the entire journey. That's all I'm saying. And I'm saying that some of you feel like you've lost your hustle. Do you know why? Probably because you hustled too much. The number one cause of doing too little is having tried to do too much. And some of you are in the midst of hustling, which puts you at risk, depending on your stamina, at A, either burning yourself out and never recovering, or B, burning yourself out and just getting better at coping, getting better at hyping yourself back up, psyching yourself back out, and getting back on the horse so we can hustle again. And again, you will have moments of your life where you will want to have the ability, the perspective, the foresight to hustle. You just want to make sure that it's not your modus operandi. You want to make sure it's not how you function naturally. Naturally, we want to be able to function intentionally and methodically and slow enough to notice what's going on inside and outside. It's the first key to human connection. It's the first key to leadership, is to notice. Hey, Erica, that's someone that has put an incredible amount of work into no longer needing to be driven by hustle, but still being able to call upon it when appropriate. Pretty awesome, pretty amazing. So that's what I want you to take with you this week. I want you to just examine where you've created a need for hustle, where you've created some flat tires in your life, some burnt out engines that your brain's scared to death to support you in going back into, because the last time you went into it, all you did when you did engage was hustle. Let's allow hustle to be there when it's actually needed. You know, we all of a sudden notice that our kids wandered out of the yard and are about to run across the street with traffic coming. That's a good time to hustle. That is a good time to push roughly. There is a lot at stake. But many of us are living a life with our downstairs brain convinced there's a lot at stake in this moment when there's not. Like that person that messaged you from your team, and you just are like, oh my gosh, if I don't reply to them right now, they're going to have a mental breakdown. I'm going to have to clean up. They're going to want to quit, blah, 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 blah. Well, we've often trained that from a hustle mentality. So any of you that have worn the badge of honor of hustle, this is not an insult to the term. And this is not a request for you to eradicate it from your life. This is an opportunity for you to step back and consider one of the greatest questions we can ever ask. At what cost? Because that's a consideration that we suck pretty bad at as human beings. It's why so many of us are unhealthy mentally, unhealthy emotionally, unhealthy physically, or a combination of all three. It's a big reason why we have so many different challenges in our lives, is because we were going too fast, or we were projecting too far, or we were taking on too much to be able to go through life with our eyes wide open and actually notice what's happening. I'm sure there's plenty of you that have hustled and gotten great results and would love to argue with me about the value of hustle. Again, all I would ask, and it may be very difficult, especially if you have exceptional results because of your stamina for hustle, to step back and go, at what cost? Because the other challenge is if you get into leadership and you built your life, your business with hustle, it feels disrespectful. It feels irresponsible to not teach them how to hustle, how to push roughly. There's a difference between being able to and needing to. There's a massive difference between being able to and needing to. Just look a little closer. Consider it. Because we've said it many times, and I'll continue to say it again. 3 greatest superpowers for your growth, for your success: compassion, patience, and curiosity, for you and for others. So as you consider the role hustle has played in your life, consider it compassionately, consider it patiently, and consider it curiously, and then go and challenge it. Thanks everybody for being here today on Disrupt Your Week. We are here every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Looking forward to being able to serve you again. And if any of you have not had a chance to take the Habit Finder, that's where all of this comes from. We've learned what we've learned through countless hours with tens of thousands of coaching clients and being able to scientifically measure how the brain actually works. You've heard the phrase, you can be right or you can be rich. Well, it's not just being right about what you should do in your business or being right about this or that. It's a much bigger game. Do you need to be right about your logic? Do you need to be right about your rationale? Do you need to be right about your reality? It doesn't mean you should sacrifice those things, but they should be reference points, not identity. As soon as what you think is true about you and others becomes identity, what you think is true about what you deserve and what you don't deserve, as soon as it's identity, it becomes incredibly difficult to disrupt. Because then you're disrupting like your intrinsic core. Sometimes we've got a tumor that's wrapped in a bunch of nerves and next to vital organs, and that's very difficult surgery. It could be very painful, but still very necessary because the cost is much better than leaving the malignant element in your body. So, okay. Thanks for being here, everybody. We will see you next week for Disrupt Your Week. Take care. Bye-bye.